We are recording.
Welcome everyone to our weekly class on Sefer Higayon. As is our custom, we give a little bit of an orientation. Sefer Higayon has three parts. The first part, he explained to us the foundations of conceptual thinking. What are concepts? The various forms they come in, the essential concept and the mikra, the attributes, and then he explained after we understand concepts, we have to put them in an organizational tool of higher and lower hierarchy. So that's the first part of the Sefer. We're in the second part of the Sefer, which is Chelke Higayon. Now he breaks up the study of Higayon into three parts. Bir Hashemos, he's going to explain all the technical language that people who, that magicians use. He has 21 terms that he's going to explain. Then he's going to explain statements, which we've gone through in Derek Tfunos, but he's going to give a slightly different variation of how to organize it. And then syllogisms, so again, which we did in Tfunos, but he's going to organize it a little more carefully. Finally, at the end of the Sefer, he'll tell us how to apply these things. And when we were doing research actually in Derek Tfunos, we went to the National Library here in Yerushalayim, and we found an original text of Derek Tfunos and Sefer Higayon. In the back of the text, there was a part called the canopification, where he actually gives examples of how to apply his method, which was extremely valuable find. So we'll be doing that at the end in the last part of the book, but we're in the middle part, and there's 21 terms that he's defined, and we're in the first one. The first one was Siba. Now, we finished the first part of Siba, which was the Siba Poelis, which is what we call here the active clause. If we can think about a person making a clay cheres, for instance, we said, so there's the external person who is creating the vessel, and then there's the internal qualities of the vessel. So the internal person who is doing it is outside the vessel itself. He's creating it, and the vessel itself is made up of chomer and surah. That's an internal aspect of the kli. When we look at the person, the Siba Poelis, externally, the thing that is creating the object, so he identified two parts. That's the Siba Poelis and the Siba Tachlisis, which is the person who is doing the work. He's creating the kli. But then we're going to talk about today what's the tachlis of that person. So there's the actual physical creation of the kli, and then there's the tachlis the person has in mind when he does the action. So let's look at this part, the tachlis. There's the poel and the tachlis. And remember, the Vilna Gaon said in Mishlei that these four things, the poel, the tachlis, and the chomer and the tzura, is one of the foundations of learning. We read that in Mishlei, and he brought the Shlomo Melech. In the beginning of Mishlei, Shlomo was the poel, and his tachlis was to teach Musar, and the chomer that he's using is Mishalim, and the tzura was, I forgot exactly what the tzura was there. But whatever, he brought these four basic concepts of form. So let's look at Tachlis and see what he has to say. Did someone join us?
It's Nassan, I believe.
Nassan. Oh, hi, Nassan. Welcome. Okay, we're just beginning again. We gave a little overview. So let's go into the Sefer and look at the Tachlis part of the Sefer. Okay. So it says there's a poel and there's a Tachlis. Ad heina ba'arnu hasiba poelis. So we spoke up to this point about the siba poelis, the active cause. Now we're going to talk about the goal, the aim of the siba poelis, of the person who's doing the activity. Vehi sheba'avora sovev hamasubav o naseh hadavar. The tachlis is the thing because of which causes the result. And that's why the whole pula is done. Okay, you always have a tachlis, and then you decide on the pula that you're going to reach that tachlis. Now, he divides tachlis into two parts, the tachlis ikari and the tachlis tafel. What is the tachlis ikari? Ha'ikari hu hakavana harishona shel hapoel. It's the principal intent of the person doing the action. The tafel hu hakavana asher lo milvad harishona b'medrega shniya leho. It's also a kavana, but it has a lower madrega. So you can have your essential goal, and then you can have minor goals. We're going to see, he's going to spell out with a few examples. Od yischalek la'achron be'emsa'i. The tachlis also has your tachlis achron and the tachlis emsa'i, the means. What's the achron? Kamashmo. It's the final result that you want. Shedai lapolbo. That's what you really wanted to produce. You want to produce that vase. What's the MCE? Shehu tachlis ladava achad, ach yeh MCE lahagia od letachlis acher shib kivein lo hapoel. It is a tachlis to a specific goal, but it's only a means to get to your tachlis achron, derech mashal. The tachlis of chachma, of the chachmas harefua, hu ledas hachalaim lemenehem u sibosehem. The goal of the wisdom of medicine is to understand the various illnesses, all their types, and the causes of them. Omnam hatachlis ha'achron hu l'rapeh es ha'cholim. But the tachlis achron is to actually heal a person who is sick. So without the MCE, without the means of the chachma, then you can't do the tachlis achron, which is to heal a sick person. So in our example of the kli, so you have to go out and buy all the material before you can produce the kli. So it's a tachlis. You have to go buy the clay, and you have to buy the spinning wheel and all those things. And then afterwards, you can get your real tachlis, which is to produce that kli. And maybe really a tachlis is to sell the kli. That's what you really want to do, and the production is really only MC. So whatever it is, you always have your final goal, and then you may have to have means to get to that goal at the end. So let's see what he says about the klale hasiba hatachlisis. What are the general rules of the Sibetachlisis. Hatachlis mania es apol. It's the goal that stirs up the person to do the action. Number two, b'davar echad yocholim limortzei tachlios rabim. In one thing, you can find a lot of different goals. As we said, your goals can make the pot. Maybe the goal is to sell the pot and get parnasa. So you can have a lot of, in one action, you can have a lot of goals associated with it. Hatachlios mishanim ha'pu'ulos. The goal will change the action that you're doing. It's a very interesting rule. Parashah. What does that mean? Ki pu'ula achas naseh mipol echad letachlis echad umipol acher letachlis acher yichshavu lepulot shonot. He says like this: an activity that one person does to reach a certain goal, and the same activity that the person does will have a different tachlis. Ukfar tocha liyos echad mehem tov ve'echad mehen ra. And it could be that even though the people do the same action, because they have different tachlis and they have different goals, one will be considered a good act and one will be a bad act. Afal pi sheshteihem echad, even though they're doing the same act. Lefi shetachlisehen shtayim, because they have two different goals. So you can have the same act done with two different goals that'll come out to be a different act. Derech mashal. Shnayim ma'arichin b'tfilasam. Two people are davening a long time. Echad l'shem shemayim, ve'echad l'gonav das habrios. She'aminu lo. One is to, one person is really davening a long time, l'shem shemayim. The other one is only to fool people so that they'll think he's a tzaddik and they'll believe him. Zeh say mitzvah, Rabbah, the one who's davening l'shem shemayim, of course, that's a tremendous mitzvah. The zeh Hashem Hashemah Rabbah. And the other person was kind of a brief, that's a tremendous severa. So the same action can turn out to be good or bad depending upon the tachlis. Also, if you give a person some money, so if it was, you can give a woman money, it could be with the tachlis of marrying her or with the tachlis of buying something from her. So depending upon the tachlis that you have, the action will be a totally different action. So that's the rule number two, that the tachlis will change the quality of the act. What's the fourth rule here? Hatachlis kodem le'emsoyim shelo b'makshava. The goal is always before the means, at least when you're thinking. Masha ein came b'maisa, but not when you actually do something. What does that mean? Perishal. Ki ein shum adam choshev be'emsoi ela im kein chashuv b'techilas ala tachlis. There's no person who will think about means if he didn't first think about a goal. In other words, first you have a goal, and then you think about the means. It's because of that goal that the means become important. So in thinking, you always think about your goal first, and then you think about how to reach those that goal. Ach, b'maisa, when it comes to maisa, it's just the opposite. But when it comes to actually doing something, there you have to have the means first, because they will allow you to get to your goal. So in Makshava, the tachlis comes first, and in Maisa, the means always come first. Number 5. Kesha tachlis hover, Kalasa ha'pu'ula shenase lagia alav. Once the tachlis is reached, so then the activity that was done to get to it stops. Okay, because all the activity was only because of the goal. Once you reach the goal, so the activity would be stopped. Mi shirotze be'emes betachlis, sarek shirotze ayam sa'id. That should be number 6, I believe. A person who really wants a goal also has to want the MCE, wants to have the means. Perisho, what does that mean? Ki hasagas hatachlas b'MCE, to get to a goal without means, it's impossible. So if you want the goal, you have to want the means also. You want to be Talmud Chacham, so you have to learn Torah. You don't learn Torah, you're not going to get to the means. So that's his 6th rule. Now we're going to go to let's look at our chart here. So we just spoke about the tachlis. And tachlis you can have, he said, you can have a main goal and minor goals. That was his first part. And you can have a final goal and also the means to get to that goal. Okay, that's what we just discussed. Now, we're going to talk about the material, okay? We spoke about the actor, the person doing the action, and now we're going to talk about the kli itself that he has created or wanted to create. Let's go back. Achoma harachok v'karov. Okay, ad heina, that's just the, I'm sorry, in gray is just the review of what goes on in the chapter. Ad heina nis ba'arna hasiba hachitzona. Up to this point, we explained the external siba, that's outside the klipat, the person who's doing the activity. Ate neva'er hapanimis. Now we'll talk about the internal siba, hanichneset. That goes into the result of the thing itself, meaning the vessel itself. When we talk about the object that's being worked on, we're going to talk about 2 things: the chomer and the tzura, the material being used and the form that it's being used in, made of. HaChomer. When we talk about the material which creates the object, in the case of Akliya, if it was a clay object, so it's made out of clay, but there he divides the chomer into 2 parts. He divides it into the chomer which is rachok and the chomer which is karov. What does it mean, the rachok? Harachok hu mash mimeno naaseh hamasubav bechevrat chomer acher karov mimeno. I'm sorry, the rachok first. The rachok hu mash mimeno naaseh hamasubav bechevrat chomer acher karov mimeno. I'm sorry, it's the rachok means that it's a distant material that was one of the materials that's going to go into the production of the item. The karov is also shmimeno nasa and mesuba bli chomer MC. The close one is the one right before the quality of the item. So in other words, we would say the rachok, he's going to give some examples, but the rachok would be like the water and the dry clay. And the karov would be the clay itself. The clay itself is what I'm going to be molding into the kli. But the clay itself had chomer, which was more rachok, which was the water and the dry clay that I mixed together. So here's his example. Moshel hachoma harachok ba'adam. What is the chomer, the distant material that man is made out of? Offer, earth. Ki Ki lo me'ofa miyad notzer havlad. The baby is not really created from earth. Ella shereishis inyanohu offer, but the primal creation of man was from earth. Achomer hakorov hu basav adam v'shahar kovin. But the immediate material that the baby is created from is the basar and the dam. Okay, so we have the immediate and the distant material. Here's some rules of Chomer. HaChomer kodem l'tzura b'teva. The Chomer always precedes the form. The material precedes the form in nature. What does that mean? Parasho. Ki efshar l'tzura l'motzei ela b'chomer. You can't create a form without having material first. First you have to have clay, and then you can make a vessel. So the material is always before the specific form. Okay, that was our little section on Chomer. Okay, now we're going to move to Tsura, the form. So we have the material and the form. Hatsura hima shabo hamasubav hu mashu. The tsura is what makes the result what it is. To explain, there's going to be two types of form. One is he calls the atzmis umidudekes, the essential form, the precise form, and the second one is called the mikri sobilti mitudekes. The second one is called the mikra, or the non precise form. Let's see how he describes that. Ha'atzmis hu ma she'oseh ha'mesubav mashehu be'amita sinyono umabdilu mishar kol hanimsoim. The tzuras atzmis is the intellectual understanding of what the thing is, which separates it from everything else. For instance, Derech Mashal, he says, the tzuras asmis of a man, hu hakol hamadaber, is the power of speech. Shekolo haseichel v'haratzon. Very interesting. This power of speech is something which includes both his mind and his will. Shebezeh hu ma shenivdal be'etzem. This is the thing which separates him, his essential self, from everything else. So his tsura atzmis is that which is the unique quality that separates him from everything else. What is the bilti mitudekes? He klal eza mikrim shemiuchadim le'eza nimsa shenitztarehu bohem. It's a mikra that's unique to a certain creation. Keshein tzuraso ha'atzmis nodas. But we use the bilti mitudekes definition of the item that we're talking about when we don't really, we can't really describe the essential item. Let's see how we use an example here. Derech mashal. Hakelev hu sheyesh lo koach hanibuach. Dogs have the ability to bark. Ve'ein ze ikar inyano shel kelev. This is not the essential item of a dog, but it's a unique aspect of him. So sometimes when we have a definition, we're going to learn more about this in Sefer Melitza. What you'd like to do is always define things through its essential property, which separates it from other things. But sometimes you can't define the uniqueness of a dog, for instance. So what you do is you take a quality that he has that makes him unique to other people, even though it's not the essential quality, like he barks. Okay, so when we're trying to define things, sometimes we'll have to, we'd love to define it according to its essence, but sometimes we won't be able to, so we'll have to define things according to a quality that's unique to it, even though it's not an essential quality.
Just for clarity, shouldn't Dala be a subsection of Gimel, really, instead of being its own section here?
Yeah, I didn't get to the parsing of this. Okay?
Oh, okay.
I didn't break. Usually I break it up nicely. These are the old letters that are hanging around from the book.
Okay, because really, built-in Nudifeka is a subsection of Tsura, right?
Yeah. Right. So I just didn't get. I didn't want to take the time to do it now, but you're right, 100%. Okay. Let's look at his Klali Hatsura. The Tsura, and I said these things are that's why you really need all these books to make the full picture. He's going to speak about definition much more in Malitza. Okay. Good. But the Tsura, so he says like this, some rules about Tsura, Klali Hatsura. Hatsura nichbedes tamid me ha-chomer. The Tsura is always more valuable than the material, perishel. Ki bo tolui kol emitis inyan himself, because that Tsura is the true definition of the item. Mashi ein kain b'chomer, which is not the chomer. The chomer may be very interesting, but a clay pot, the interesting part of it is the Tsura, that it's a pot. It happens to be made of clay, but it's much more important what it is, because there's a lot of things made from clay. So he says it's always more important, the Tsura, than the material. Hatsura atzmis eino museges mehachush. The Tzuras Atzmis, is very interesting what he just says here, is not conceived from the senses. What does that mean? It's the intellectual definition of something. It's not the physical form. When he's talking about Tzura, he's talking about the intellectual definition. The Pul'os Hanimsa Talui B'Tzura Shalo. The activity of anything that exists depends upon its Tzura. Okay, of course, the dog can't do what a man does, etc. So that's very, very important. So when he's talking about Tsura here, he's talking about the intellectual definition of an item. Okay, that's different than the Chomer. The Chomer just is physical material, but this is the definition. Let's see if I could find that that piece in Tfunos. If I can very quickly, then we'll because I want to show you that go. Oh no, of course I forgot the fourth part. So. Okay, just 1 second. Let me just move this over a little. Okay. This is their Tfunos that we did last time. Here we are. Here's the Mishlei with the parashah to go. It says Mishlei Shlomo ben David, Melech Yisrael. It's the Mishalim of Shlomo ben David, who was the king of Israel. L'das Chachma u'Musa, to know wisdom and ethics. La'avin imre vina, to understand the words of wisdom, understanding. Lekachas Musa Haskel, and to take an intellectual lesson of ethics. Okay, it sounds much better in Hebrew. Let's see. So this is the parasha going. He says, Mishlei, okay. B'chol dava yesh chomer, poel, tzura, v'tachlis. That's what we've just been studying. He says the Gra, everything has a chomer and a poel, the tzura and the tachlis. So the Ramchal put the chomer here and the tzura here, and he called those internal things, and he called the poel and his tachlis the external things. But the Gra agrees that these four things are an essential ingredient of everything that we observe. Kamosh Ketuv Kamapamim, he wrote it many times in his Sefer. V'chein hu kan, and this in the opening line of Mishlei, it's the same thing. Mishlei hu chomer shel hasefer hazeh. The material that we're going to use is mashalim. That's the chomer. The physical material we don't use, it's intellectual material, but it doesn't matter. That's why we brought it here, because it doesn't have to be physical material like making a clay pot. It could be what's being used in making the sefer. So he says Mishlei is the chomer that is going to be used in the sefer.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
The rabbi just wanted to be medayik in the fact that the Gra says chomer first instead of tzur, that chomer is more important. What was about the order of things? Was there some type of meaning behind that?
I think he put chomer first only because he's trying to explain Mishlei. That's what I think. Okay, I think it's much more important the poel and his tachlis than the chomer and the tzura. Okay.
Okay, fine. Okay.
So I think he just did it because that's the beginning lines. Okay, but if you have a better theory, I'm open to hear it. But okay, yeah. So he says like this. Okay. Hachomer hu seif. Mishlei hu hachomer shel hasefer. Whoops, what I used to do. Gentlemen, too many. Wow, that was fun. I don't know how I just did that. I hit a button that linked. There it is. Let me just get rid of this. Okay. Okay. Good. Shlomo hu poel. Okay. Mishlei is the first word, so he says that defines the chomer. Shlomo ben David, Melech Yisrael, is the poel. Ladas, Chachma, Umusar, Labin Imreibina, Hu Tavniso v'tzuraso v'inyano. He says that is the tzura of the Sefer. Now you can explain that to me too, I'm not, but that's what he says. He says the tzura of this book is to understand wisdom. And the tachlis of all that wisdom is l'kachas musa, to actually change yourself and to make yourself a different person. Ki lo halimud ika ela hamais, because the learning, well, that's very nice. The learning is not the essence, but the actual changing of your activities. So he says, when it comes to the tzura, he says the tzura is to learn chachma and bina. That's what you're supposed to be doing. That's a tzura sabela, with the goal of changing yourself and taking musa. So that's how the application of the Gra to Mishlei. Okay, and as I said, what we have to do is we're going to have to, in our learning, integrate this language into our learning in order to make it real. That's going to be the real test. My Chaver has done quite a lot of it, so maybe we'll use some of these things. We'll take a time out and we'll do an application class. But first, let's get the basic terms so we know what we're talking about. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so now we're up to the Misubav. Okay, the results. Now the results, and that's why I put them here in a little bit of a white color here, even though it's not on the same line. The results are going to follow the order of the Sibot. Okay, and that's what the Ramchal is going to say. So just like we have 4 Sibot, 2 which are internal, 2 external, we're going to have the 4 resultant the results of the course. So let's see how he explains that. Ad heina ba'arnu hasiba. Up to this point, we explained cause. Ad heina ba'ar hasuba. Now we're going to talk about result. V'hu ma shenolat mikoach hasiba. The result is that which is given rise or is born from the cause. So he says, L'kol arba hasibos yesh mesubav. To all of the 4 sibas that we just spoke about, each one has a result, and he gives them names. Hamasubav hapoeles hu ha-pa'ul. The result of a siba poelis is the action that he does. Hamasubav hatachlisis hu hanigzar. The result of the siba tachlisis, of the goal, is called what is nigzar, the decree. Say better than that. The masubav hatsurius hu hamatsuyar. The intellectual definition of something is that which is pictured, or that which is, and the subav of the chomris, the siba chomris is the chomer. The result of the siba chomris is the material. So each one has its resultant cause. Klale hamasubav. Let's look at his rules of result. Hamasubav lo yeh lo koach yoter mi sibasav. He says that the result can never be stronger than the cause. Perisho, ki ein hamasubav ela ma shenolad min hasiba. The result is only something that came as a result of the cause. V'hasiba einu yochol laholid ma she'ein bo. And a cause can't give birth to something that it doesn't have. So therefore, you cannot find anything in the result that wasn't there in the cause. If I heat up a piece of metal with some fire, so whatever, or let's say some hot water, let's say, make it easier. If I heat some metal with hot water, so the resultant heat in the metal that can't be greater than the 212 degrees or 100 degrees centigrade that I had in the water. Okay. Kamus hasiba, kamaus hasiba, kachmaus hamasubav. Whatever the siba has will be produced in the masubav, in the result. Perisho. Zelo yuvan ela basiba hativeis, ikaris umiyuchedis. this is only true about the Siba, the natural Siba, which was essential and worked by itself. And it has to be with the result that can receive the Siba. I wish we would have given examples, but what it means is that you can't produce a result different than what the Siba was. Not in Kamos. I mean, but you can't, hot things shouldn't be able to produce a cold result. Unless there's some other things associated with it, that's what he's saying. If there's other things around it, shutafim somewhere, so then anything can happen. But if you have one Siba, so that Siba should produce what it is essentially. It can't, nothing comes from air. Unless
well, it depends. You say,
of course.
then I guess you have to know what the example I gave before of the water heating up the metal. So you're identifying that the Siba is just the heat of the water, and then you're going to look at the metal and say, okay, it's getting only heat from the water and nothing else. Because if you have a parent and a child, right, which is a Siba and a Mesubav also, we said you could have a parent that's very different than a child, and a child that's very different than a parent.
Right, and that's because they shoot tough from there, so you can't tell how the chromosomes are going to end up in that child. But you won't get a child that looks like a third party altogether. I mean, maybe there are recessive genes can come there, and you just can't see them, but they're there. But it's just a simple thing that you can't create something different than what you produced. Okay, but that's, he says, it's only if it was the CB chorus. If there's other things involved, like you said, the mother and the father, so it's not going to look like the child is not going to look like the father completely or the mother completely. We just did a story in the Nooks about, okay, I don't want to get so much involved, a guy who was doing genetic research, genetic engineering. So they can only use the plants that they create. They can't use the seeds from the plants because they never know what combination went into the seed. So they can only use cuttings to reproduce the new things that they created. Anyway, but that's a general. The general rule is the result doesn't come from, the result can only come from its cause. So if there's one cause, you can't create a different result. Okay. Hadaba sheba'aboro acher hu mashehu kol shechen hu atzmo yeh. Something because of which something else is what it is, so kol shechen hu atzmo yeh. So certainly he has to be that. In other words, whatever you can define in the result, you have to say that backwards that the cause was there also. The first one says the cause has to produce the item in the result, but also the result has to have that which came from the cause. Derech mashal. Im hasvarim nechmadim ba'abor hachachma hanecheches behem. If svarim are, I say, pleasant because of the wisdom that's found in them, so kol shechen shtiyeh nechmar hachachma atzma. So then chachma has to be something that's pleasant. Okay, if the book, which is the result of the chachma, is pleasant, so then the chachma itself has to be pleasant. So that's the backwards correlative. Okay.
Yeah, I would have never even thought that you would call that a cause and a result. I would have thought that a sefer is part and parcel of the chachma. It's not the pages of the book that's nachmadim. It's not the chomer of the book. It's the chachma that's written in it. But so he's saying it's really.
You do say I like that book.
What you really mean to say is like the contents of the book.
You like the contents of the book. But you could say it's a good book. So it's a
right.
good
So
book
he's saying
because of the wisdom in it. So if it's a good book because of the wisdom that you found in it, so the wisdom itself must have been.
Must have been. Okay.
Okay. You have to I know I agree also. It's a little bit, okay, mind twister. Okay, the Seder. So that's our discussion of cause. Okay, there's our little chart. He broke it down to cause and effect. Two basic principles. He starts it because I think it's one of the most important principles of learning. You say, what's the siva sechiv? What's the cause of the din? We're always involved. Manolan, where did it come from? In our famous Baba Kama, we have Abos, Mikhaldiga Toldos, the Toldos come, the Masuba of the din. So this is one of the most important parts of logical thinking is cause. And many times we don't know cause, and we'd love to know cause. Like there's wonderful diseases around, and we'd love to know the causes, but we don't know them. We know the effects, and we can handle the effects, but we don't really know the cause, like a terrible disease that's floating around. You know, cancer, they handle the effects of it by destroying the cells, but they haven't yet put their finger on what causes it. I mean, they have a lot of ideas, you know, smoking cigarettes and other agents that are not too healthy, but the actual reason of why a cell goes crazy and starts multiplying is something that's not that clear. So they handle the result and not the cause. Okay, so that's those are two basic things, cause and result. He defined for us the external and internal causes. In the external cause, he said that there's the four parts, the active cause, the goal. Those are the two. I'm sorry. Those are two parts of the external cause. The person who's doing the action and his goal, and we just did the internal aspects, which is the physical material and the intellectual form, which is understood by the mind, and we went through all the different types of poel. We spoke about the poel ba'atzmo, the essential activity, the essential one that's doing the activity, and poel b'mikra. Sometimes it's not the essential thing that's doing it. He said, but it's a mikra that's doing the result, like the whiteness of paper may make your eyes tire. That's a mikra of the paper, not the paper itself. And then he also defined, very importantly, different types of causes: the cause that gives birth to something, the cause that keeps it going, and the cause that destroys it. That's the melida, the kayemis, and the mafsedis. And then he said causes have natural causes, and then there's man that has will. So there's causes that are teva and ritzon. And then he said that there's also levels of causes. You have the direct cause, which is the thing right next to the result, and the rechok cause, which is the farthest away, and then you have all the intermediate ones, the emsa'i, in between them. So that was our basic discussion of cause. Let's go on to if there's any questions. As I said, the challenge here will be to apply these principles. Okay, matter of fact, maybe what we should do here is give some of these examples, just to make this a little less abstract. Okay. In the end of the book, we put in the Sefer this very important find, which was the conification. So we can't understand, we haven't done the book yet to understand the complete value of it, but just to get an idea of some of his examples of the Siba Poelis. Let's look at some of his examples. He says here, the Siba Poelis, for instance, he says, if I ask you, what is the Siba Poelis of the world? So he says, the Siba Poelis of the world is a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay? Now, there's other sibos that make the world go round, right? Like the sun and the moon, and like the sun and the wind. But that's not the CB chorus. Now, a lot of people, those emseim to the Siba Poelis, but Kodesh Baruch Hu is the Siba Poelis Levad. That's why we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Hakeh Hashem Echad, because he's the Siba Poelis Levad of the whole world. But there's a lot of emseim that are korov to us, between us and the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and that's why people, Rambam explains, started to worship the Siba Smucha, the close ones, like the sun and the wind and all the other forces of nature. And we always go to the Siba Rechoka, and we mentioned that in Chavos Levavos, he says that the further away the Siba is, the more important it is, because Kodesh Baruch Hu is the Siba of everything, so he's the most important thing in the whole world. But anyway, that's an example of a Siba Poelis, the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And let's see some other examples of Siba Poelis that he brings. Okay, he says Hashem is the guide to the world. Let's see what else. I put them in blue here. Let's look at the Siba Tachlisis, he says. Higayon Tachliso Hatavas Haskala. He says the learning Higayon, what is the Tachlis of learning Higayon? That's to improve your ability to learn, to become wise. What is the tachlis of a milchama? A milchama, the tachlis is nitzachon, is victory. Okay? So those are little examples of Siba tachlis. Let's see what else he has here. Siba chomris. Okay? Adam Yibochem bohachomer, bohu adama. So the Siba Chomris of man, originally, at least as explained, was adama. But of course, that's rachok. He said that the korov ones, again, were flesh and blood. Okay. What about the Siba? Here's another Siba Chomris, ase gofer. Okay, why do you say, that's a gopher for what? Siba Chomer, Sabachon Gezer. So Adam Efshar Shiyeh Ruchani Lefi Shehu Basav Adam. You know what that has to do with that's a gopher. Okay, I don't know. I don't know how that came in with that's a gopher, to tell you the truth. Oh, here it is. It was on the other one. I understand. It's over here. Here. Oh, Selecha, that makes more sense. Oh, that's good. It says in the Bereshis, Aselecha Tevas Atze Gopher. As Noah was told to make his teva from gopher wood, and that's what he did. So that's called the Siba Chomris. Okay. Let's look at his Siba Tsurius, the form. Adam Tsuroso Anefesh HaMaskelas. He says the Tsura of the man, which again is the intellectual essence of man, is that he has a intellectual soul. Okay. Let's see what else he has over here. The Mesubav. Hashemesh, he says like this. Oops. Hashemesh mimisubavim hachom v'haor. The result of the sun is heat and light. So those are results from the sun. Okay. So I think that's the end of this discussion. We also have in Derek Funos, we had a few. We'll just give a few more examples here that he brings, but I think it's pretty clear. Again, Bezrat Hashem, we'll have to take time and do the learning and say, okay, now what is the CV here? What's the Mesuba? And how does it work? And which one is it? What's the Chomer? Okay, so we'll stop here. Next week we'll speak about Nose and Schaber, and we'll keep going. Okay, so have a good week, and we'll pick up the next Sefer in a little bit. So we're just going to continue.
Yeah, we continue. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. We'll say that.
We're going to really have to see how all this comes together. These examples are like little, just like little, you know, they whet your appetite a little bit. But
yeah, exactly. We're going to have, my Chaber has a lot of application stuff. Okay, so I'm going to ask him to bring some. Maybe next week we'll spend the time doing some applications. Okay. And make this live, because again we know about these things, but we don't do it consciously, and it's a little bit of a challenge to integrate it into our learning. Okay, but that's what we're going to do. Bezrat Hashem. Okay, so let's go to our you can ask.